last Doha, which we were the 29th one, the one point, obviously, we have discussed the essence where he said, where there is ego, there is no room for discovery of your own self, because the ego or the play of ego getting caught up in an egoistic relationship with the world only pulls you down. It doesn't help you evolve. So the only way to evolution is, in fact, we can also relate spiritual evolution as liquidation of one's ego. So the less egoistic you are, that's a sign of, you could say very safely that is a sign of evolution, because many of us do, we all need pointers to gauge our own spiritual development. So this could be one of the very powerful tools to measure how spiritually developed we are, by measuring one's own, how pronounced the ego is. And as the ego gets liquidated, diluted, you can say it, the effects of it, we said that it creates more harmony, it creates peace within. Ultimately, it puts you on path to realization of the self. Now, the only statement which he says, all the darkness dispelled once I saw the light within. I think this specific line, perhaps that Kabirji is suggesting very subtly his stance of the state he was in. You know, the moment that light of wisdom dawns, there is no more darkness. I saw the light within. So referring to his state of perhaps the realized state he was in. So also we need to relate here, the depth or the density of darkness has no reference to the ray of light. It doesn't matter how long you have been plunged in darkness and how dense the darkness has been, the very first ray of light dispels the darkness, isn't it? It could have been a very a cave deep in the recesses of the mountain. Nobody has ever explored, nobody has ever gone there. But when you end up there, it's been there for you for eons like that. But the moment you strike the first ray, first matchstick, the first spark instantly dispels the longevity of it, darkness. It doesn't say because this cave has been in darkness for X number of years, it would proportionally take that long to dispel the darkness. It doesn't work that way. So in that sense, it doesn't matter how long we are plunged in ignorance. The moment the knowledge or light or wisdom comes in, it instantly dispels the the ignorance. So you could say it is quality over quantity. The solidarity of time has no reference to the quality of this wisdom. So the knowledge or wisdom is far superior to the ignorance. Philosophically, I know the only person in this classroom who has the answer is Sriniji. Therefore, I had to ask Sriniji only. So look at the amount of faith I have in you. So can you tell me how does this ignorance manifests philosophically when we say ignorance is dispelled?
Ignorance is dispelled?
Ignorance is dispelled. Apart from the ego we mentioned, as he says, as light or wisdom dawns, let's say wisdom dawns, ignorance is dispelled, ignorance is gone.
Yeah.
Now, how does that ignorance manifest? Right now, you can self-examine and say, this much ignorance I have.
Isn't it based on your...
How do you gauge the ignorance is the question, sir?
Isn't it based on your intellect itself?
Ignorance is related to intellect.
I mean, if you know, it's a toggle bit. If you use the intellect, then you would be probably thinking, saying, hey, ego is coming in way, or ignorance is coming
apart from ego, sir, apart from the play of ego as we discussed, how else would you, in fact, ego is not the direct expression of ignorance philosophically.
Mm-hmm.
It is an expression of other things, but strictly speaking, ego is not expression of ignorance. So the question is, in fact, not even expression, what is synonymous to ignorance in Vedantic language?
I don't want to just unnecessarily guess.
So I had so much faith on you. What is that? I need to with my intellect, reevaluate a lot of things, sir.
Some of us
very
are
high
ignorant.
hopes.
Some of us are ignorant.
I put everybody else into that category except you. And that's what I'm saying. No? Harish, what is synonymous for ignorance?
Hariam Guruji. I'm not sure at this stage, Guruji.
Is it too early in the morning to ask you, Harish?
No, not at all.
Not okay. Then it's okay.
Not
because I couldn't say that to Srini because he is coming to the end of the day. Maybe he says it's too late for me to ask such serious questions. Maybe you ask me in the morning, I would have answered it with greater clarity, isn't it? Huh? All right. Reddy Garu, synonymous for ignorance, because the reason I'm asking is you must know how to gauge your ignorance, isn't it? Otherwise, how do you gauge your ignorance?
Pranam Guruji. But unfortunately, there is no barometer for us to verify the level, the quantum of neither intellect nor the ignorance what we have or one possesses.
There's no barometer?
Precisely to measure the level which we're talking about.
Because ignorance is such a broad and a vague area. How would I know what am I ignorant of? It's like asking you, can you tell me what all you do not know? You can say, sir, how can I tell you what all I do not know? I don't know how to cook. You can say, I don't know microbiology, I don't know rocket science, I don't know this, I don't know that. You can go on and the list is unending. You can't capture areas of ignorance because what you know is very little, isn't it?
Yes, sir? It's a sheer fraction of what we know than the unknown. So
of what we do not know.
So with the unknown quantum is so much. So I don't think we can have a measurement that what we know.
Correct. It is difficult to measure ignorance literally. Therefore, philosophically, ignorance has a different expression. And that's where it's easier for us to at least attempt to understand. Otherwise, by itself is very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
So what is the expression of ignorance? Let's ask Pushpama. Sorry, Dr. Pushpama. She's very particular. She's also titled herself as doctor. So we have to address her with right. Reddy Garu, please don't make that mistake. Huh? Always address her as Dr. Pushpama. Okay.
Yes.
To agree.
I feel as ignorance is Ajnanam only, no, Guruji.
Ajnanam is ignorance, but how does it, what is synonymously ignorance to be understood as philosophically? How does it express? I thought this wouldn't be a difficult question to answer. But I can relate to you all why you're not able to relate. There's no issue on that. Anything else, Pushpama?
Not getting Guruji.
I can understand. It's a little too early for Pushpama. It's okay. Harish Kumar. I will only call people by the name they've titled themselves.
Hari Om Guruji.
Sir, every time, whenever I see you, always this fresh, is it? With Namam, Tilla, Killa, put it.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. Man of action. Yes, sir.
I think what you're trying to get at is that ignorance will manifest as the concept that you know everything, that of certainty, that you know, that arises out of ignorance.
No, that, as I even immediately clarified when Simi said of what ego, removing that equation out of it, because we've already gone through that. Past couple of sessions, we've analyzed ego, its consequences, which is nothing but an expression. But other than that,
otherwise, to say that this is real. So what exists is only what you can perceive.
so the question is, how does the ignorance of the self manifest? That's all I'm asking. Maybe by putting the question this way, it helps. I don't know. Yes, Eduji?
Hari Om Guruji. This ignorance is due to vasanas.
Correct. Perfect, sir. Ignorance is not due to vasanas. I would say ignorance is vasanas.
Vasanas, yeah.
Vasanas. So the ignorance of the self manifests in the form of vasanas and desires. So when, to the extent these vasanas, the extent you spiritually develop, perfect, Setuji, perfect.
Yeah.
So to the extent these vasanas, you evolve spiritually, to that extent the ignorance of these vasanas drops away. So a person who is less developed, less spiritually developed. Now, Sriniji, what would be the characteristics of his vasanas? If there are different characteristics, different natures, isn't it? For a person who is less developed, what would be the characteristics of his vasanas?
Wanting more, greed, those kinds of things may be there, right?
There is personification of greed. You would find the vasanas are very gross in nature, isn't it?
Yep.
Very gross, very animalistic, very physical, very sensual, very materialistic. So a person who is less spiritual, he is more sensual and materialistic. His thoughts are very base. His thoughts and feelings are very gross. So it is inversely proportional. But as you keep evolving spiritually, now what happens to the nature characteristics of your vasanas?
They diminish.
What diminishes?
Well, the vasanas that will come down is what I feel.
One is the quantity of vasanas. You're right, but we are talking about the quality as well here. When I say when you are less developed, your nature of vasana is very gross. We're talking of quality, not quantity there. So even with reference to describing the quality when one evolves, what will be the nature of the vasanas quality?
What you would, the opposite of it, which is basically you'd start thinking at a higher level, doing good for the broader good, so to speak.
You will entertain nobler thoughts. You'll entertain chaster emotions. You're not gross in nature. You start exhibiting certain divine qualities, isn't it?
Mhm.
In other familiar terms, sattvic qualities. You become more sattvic vis-a-vis rajasic and tamasic. Now, this is how I can measure my spiritual development. So the vasana, there's nothing wrong. Huh? When I say vasana is gross, it is the guna in the vasana makes it gross. You must differentiate that. Vasana is only the field of activity. Guna is the Gayatrima. What's the difference between vasana and guna?
Guna is our attitude or the characteristics of that.
The very character or the nature of the action is defined by the guna. And vasana is?
It's a desire like gross.
No. Vasana, what is a vasana?
It is the very nature of a person, like what all he has it in us.
That is true, but if you're saying guna as the characteristic or the nature, what is a vasana then? Vasana takes you into the field of activity, that's all. The difference, if you have to nail it, vasana takes you into the field of activity. Guna gives you the characteristics of action. What characteristics? What is the nature of that action is defined by the guna. Like all of us are into this philosophy. Why? Because all of vasanas is the same, at least in this context. But as philosophers, are we all the same? So what differentiates us is the gunas. The different gunas brings about the different characteristics of our personality. So when I said, Sriniji, the grossness of the vasana, I meant the grossness of the guna, not the vasana by itself. So the quality of the vasana changing. So the change in quality is the change in the characteristics, which is the guna. So when I started my spiritual journey, the vasana for philosophy existed. That's the reason I started my journey. Midway during the pursuit, my vasana perhaps could have got more intensified, isn't it? There was a greater fervor, greater purpose. Now, if I look back, there's no doubt that this is the primary purpose of my life. Not that I would not, when I started my journey, I wouldn't have thought that this becomes the primary objective of my life. I wouldn't have assumed that. So the vasana remained the same over 30 years. But what has changed? Certainly so. What has changed? I'm explaining the quality of vasana. What has changed is the character of the nature of my personality, the nature, which is the proportion of the gunas, that has changed. So the action becomes gross or subtle, not based on the vasana, but based on the action becomes gross or subtle. Yes, Ranji, the action becomes gross or subtle based on the
the gunas itself, the characterization of the gunas. Yeah.
character. So that qualifies the action as gross or subtle. But you're also not wrong. Now I'm just moving on from that concept. You're also not wrong. I give two vasanas. One is to study the scriptural literature, the vasana to study the literature, vis-a-vis the vasana to travel the world. Now, in these two vasanas, which you say is subtle, which is gross?
Traveling the world would be gross.
Traveling the world is physical, involved, is gross. The study of the scripture is a subtler vasana. So you can also say the vasana also can be gross or subtle based on what it draws you to do. So we are giving two interpretations here. One is the nature of the gunas that define or qualify a vasana as gross or subtle, vis-a-vis the very vasana itself can be gross or subtle. It's just a two ways of looking at it, and you're not wrong to look at it this way, because per se there's nothing right and wrong. Per se, you can't call an act. First interpretation is per se you can't call a vasana as gross or subtle. What makes it gross or subtle is the gunas. The second is we are saying the vasana itself has two different, can have two extremely contrasting natures. So one is to travel the world, vis-a-vis to sit at a place and explore the truth within. So also the vasana. So ignorance expresses in the form of your vasanas. So quality changes and also quantity drops. You will find you will get far more lighter. Yes, Hariji. Before I get to that, expanding on quantity. Yes, Hariji.
Your question was how we will be able to measure the degree of our ignorance. So of course, vasana is the cause of ignorance, but I will not be able to measure the degree of my ignorance. This vasana as such is an unmanifest form. I can do it only when it is in a manifest way. So I thought the degree of my mental agitation would be perhaps the measure of my ignorance. The more I am ignorant, the more will be my mental agitation. Vasana as such, how will I be able to measure my vasanas? Of course, that is the root cause.
So see, when we say, you're right, when we say vasanas, it is unmanifest, but then the vasana doesn't remain in vasana stage. No? It immediately starts fructifying in the form of desire.
So it is the mental agitation. The more I am mentally agitated, that would be the measure of my degree of...
It is, I think it's expanding or giving too much to the mental agitation itself. I can't therefore conclude the more mental agitations I have, the more ignorance I have.
Okay.
I think it is stretching its context beyond its ability. It's like you're stretching, and every object has its elasticity. You know? When you stretch it beyond its elasticity, it snaps. I think this is what is happening. If you conclude that my mental agitation is directly proportional to my level of or degree of vasanas I have, I think you're giving too much into it. It can't bear the weight of the concept. No, it can't. I think this, I feel uncomfortable because it doesn't sound correct.
Okay.
You're right to a certain extent, but beyond that, you can't say, therefore, agitations is measured by, vasanas is measured by agitations, or ignorance is measured by agitations, is very difficult. You can't say, therefore, ignorance is agitation.
Okay.
I wouldn't conclude that way, but you have a point. You have a point.
Okay.
So therefore, we said the ignorance manifests in the form of vasanas, and then we may see how do you measure. Next question you may ask: how do you measure your vasanas? Ramji will answer it. All the easy questions will go to Ramji. All the tough questions to Sriniji. So I'm being very fair. Ramji, we can't hear you, sir. Sorry.
No, you are reserving questions for me, Guruji. It is,
Oh, is that how it's all going now? So I don't know, sir. You know. So I come least prepared. I don't have a script for the class, sir.
yeah, sure. Sir. No, I think measurement of vasanas, again, I think going back to your point that how do you measure? Do you measure how many vasanas you have, or what is the quality of vasanas you have?
Both.
Both we have to measure. So I think then
Sir, just like in an organization, you would know very well where, let's say there are 1,000 employees in an organization, and the organizational structure is a pyramid, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the base, what are the numbers are many at the base, isn't it, sir?
Correct. Yeah.
As you go up, what happens? The numbers keep dropping, far lesser and lesser, and then only a few directors, a few vice presidents, and there's only one chairman at the top. So what's happening? The grosser people are, the numbers are many.
Yeah.
The subtler you become,
numbers are less.
Numbers are less. Same principle applies to vasanas.
Correct. Yes.
So you have to gauge both quantity and quality.
I think we can measure the quantity on the basis of I don't know whether I'm correct, but I think you can measure the quantity on the basis of the level of extrovertedness you have, or the amount of desires and extroverted worldly interaction you have. That could be one way, sir, on the quality and the quantity front. But the subtler ones you can, but that is the gross one. So the subtler ones you can measure on the basis of the level of the sattvic percentage. Like you always said that everybody has got these 3 percentages, right? Sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. So our effort is to increase the sattvic percentage. through the self discovery process or self-realization process. So if we can measure our sattvic percentage, how much we are sattvic, that could be another way of measuring the subtler one or the quality one.
So you are in full form today, sir, like unlike yesterday. Right. But yeah, I'm just saying, I remember yesterday. So I'm not trying
I know,
to.
I know. Yesterday I was not in a good form.
We knew that, sir. We knew that. You're actually right. How do you measure your vasanas? Is you become more vasanas you have, the more active you become, the more extroverted you are, the more you rush out into the world. The less vasanas you have, the less active you are, more contemplative you become. You become more introverted. And I think you can use this to measure quantity and quality also. We're talking of how do you know how many vasanas you have? This is through extrovertedness and introvertedness. And if somebody asks you, how do you say that? What's the reason you'll give? Why I am asking this to you all is because tomorrow you all will become custodians of knowledge. You have an obligation. Tomorrow you go on voice out. You should have a standing, a platform to be able to speak logic. That's all. That's reason. Not to make you all pedantic or scholarly, but we understand within and then justify as well. But how do you say that more vasanas, more active, less contemplative, less vasanas, less active, more contemplative? How do you say that?
I think that is the way it manifests, sir. I mean, you can observe that the people who are more extroverted and who are more full of desires and full of worldly activities, it multiplies, right? So you won't stop with one. So you will get into different areas of operation there in that field. Whereas if you are more introverted, you will reduce your field of activities and you will be more internally focused. So your external engagements will come down dramatically. So I think that is how you can see the manifestation.
Sorry, sir. You have lost your charm of convincing me, sir. This particular thing, you are right. I know you see it very clearly, but I am not able to see it, sir.
Yeah. So let me say in another way that your extrovertedness is more selfish or self-oriented, right?
No, let's not go into that.
Okay.
Because that we are expanding what extroversion is, which I know you understand.
Okay.
I'm only asking the theorem which justifies that statement. More vasanas extroverted, less vasanas introverted. How are you saying that? What's the formula you come to the conclusion? Okay. Please think along, sir. But
Okay,
your
sir.
answer is apt. That how do you measure vasanas? The more vasanas, you are extroverted, less vasanas, you are introverted. That's perfect. But how do you say that? Rajima, any idea? Hmm? UK?
Is it by the efforts you make towards trying to reach the self, Guruji, the kind of efforts, the quality of efforts you make?
No, we are generally asking the question, more vasanas extroverted, less vasanas introverted. How do you substantiate that argument? Now, you remember the concept of the 3 transactions of life?
Yeah. Selfish, selfless.
No, there are 3 types of actions. The 3 transactions of life are.
That is the Rajasic, that one.
That is the gunas. Okay. Tell all what are 3, you please tell. Whatever is 3, all the 3 will come out,
No.
Ma, I will want you to make a chart of all the 3 that appear in philosophy. We can have a quick chart. Okay, what are the 3? Okay, what is Guruji asking? Okay, quick reference chart we'll have.
No.
No, it is going to help you and me also. Please prepare, and for everybody we'll share it. A little exercise for you, ma. Okay. No. I'm seriously saying, what are the 3 things that? What are the threefold concepts in Vedanta we learn? There are sattva, rajas, tamas. There's waking, dream, deep sleep, and then there is selfish, unselfish, selfless, and so on. There might be a few concepts in that way, but the 3 transactions of life are receipt of stimuli from the world, reaction that happens within your personality, within your mind and intellect, and responses back into the world. Now I'll tell you how this receipt, reaction, response happens. Last week, somewhere, the course of last week, I got a clipping of a video of Rafael Nadal playing Djokovic in the quarterfinal of Roland Garros, the French Open. It was just a highlight 4-5 minute video. It just gripped my attention, and I just saw that is the essence of a match where Nadal won. That stimuli had gone in, and that stimuli reacted with what? With a vasana,
which was,
or a taste for sport in general. But I don't see every sport. Like I don't like golf. No, people who play golf, I don't like. That's a particular vasana I have. Now you can't complain at that. I'm being very upright, Siniji. I don't like. In fact, to the point, I would go and say I hate. Sorry, I didn't mean to that extent, but that is my vasana. You don't blame me for that. That's my ignorance, Sriniji. Don't laugh at me like that, please. Just you have to, we are trying to, Okay. Now, the stimuli of the French Open happening reacted with the vasana within, and the result was some bird came and chirped in my head and say, hey, Sunday is usually the men's finals. Saturday is the women's singles, and Sunday is it's a 2-week tournament, and weekend they conclude with the final. And midst of my work, Tinkima, please check whether the takeaway is all in proper order. Because yesterday, while preparing the takeaways, I was seeing silently the finals between Nadal and I don't know who, the new chap, first time in his Grand Slam. Rugga.
Rude. Casper Rude.
Rude. Some funny name he had. No?
Casper.
But anyway, Rude. Yeah, Rude, correct. So I was able to analyze that little. Thank God the match went into 4 hours. It was finished in 1.5 hours. It's below 6-3, 6-3, 6-love, clean sweep. So I could sleep in my appointed time. Otherwise, no way I would have stretched beyond 9:30. I can't. It may go on till 11 o'clock. It may go on. I'll see if at all to know who has won. Next day, I'll see the news. But I will not sit into the late into the night. I'll not do. So I'm trying to explain the vasana. How does vasana to be understood with receipt of stimuli is information from the world, reaction within your mind and intellect, and responses back into the world. So the fact that I was available, I made myself available to watch that match is because of
The vasana in you.
the vasana in me. That's how you can measure receipt, reaction, response. Now, I would like Raghu Garu to explain. How do you explain when you don't have a vasana? Raghu Garu, the 3 steps, perhaps this is the first time you're hearing this. The receipt, reaction, response. Okay, sir. Could you please try now? I don't know what's happening. Okay. Rajima, just please don't do it. Just make now we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I can. Yeah. This I recently came across some. Probably in 60s or 70s, there is an English philosopher, Robert Ellis or Albert Ellis, I'm not sure. I ordered a book from Amazon, but according to his theory, he has the same thing like REBT, which we call as REBT, reaction and kind of belief system. He thinks that any things happening out in the outside world is not the cause for anger or any other things within ourselves. The things on the outside world, the way we believe and analyze them is a cause for anger and other issues and whatever the thing. So if somebody, a Christian, if someone says bad about Jesus Christ, they will get hurt because it's just in their head. And it's just the belief. They believe something and somebody said something against it, they may get hurt or something like that. So that's an example I've given. But most of the time, I think the external situations are not the real cause for anything. It's the internal stuff we built up and the structure we have inside, probably the mechanism which is analyzing the things happening outside probably would be the problem.
Agree with you. Perfect. So irrespective of what the world throws at you, if you have something to react to it, then you will respond either favorably or unfavorably. And that's what determines whether, if you are reacting favorably to a stimuli, you will be active. Now, let's say in the next few months, I think there's going to be a World Cup happening in Ramgaru. You know that, no? What, sir? There's a World Cup happening. Oh,
Qatar.
sorry.
T20 World Cup in Australia.
See? I say World Cup, one is talking of Qatar, one is talking of Australia.
What is
This
Qatar?
is the play of the mind. Qatar, I think the football is happening.
Football World Cup. Yeah, soccer.
Yet,
yeah, soccer.
but I was talking about the T20 World Cup happening in Australia.
Yeah.
Later this year. Now, when that stimuli comes, would you jump into planning a trip there, to go there and be a part of that experience? Or you say, I can sit in the house and watch the same thing, if at all I want to catch up with it.
So actually, this is a good example that when I heard this, I wanted to book the tickets, go. I found that already India-Pakistan match is fully booked. So there were no tickets available. But I wanted to book and have a holiday. So my...
Sir, how can you forget your guru, sir? All these things, you know.
No, I'm just saying 3 responses. My wife said I'm not interested.
Sriniji, I don't like Ramji also into the category.
So when I said this, my wife said I'm not interested in cricket. And my son said we can watch it on TV. So it's the 3 responses to the same stimulus you can see.
So your home should be the center, not the boundary of invitation.
Yeah.
You open the invitation beyond the boundary, you will see what kind of responses you'll get.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. We will go, sir. We will go.
Is it being recorded, Gayatri Ma? We will take action against this if it doesn't happen.
Sure.
Right. No, see, exactly. So you could relate to the example. So this is how we are able to actually gauge how I would have reacted 10 years ago. How would I reacted 5 years ago? How am I reacting now to the same vasana? It's not that suddenly the vasana disappears, but the intensity of vasana is gone. Tomorrow, there were days, in fact, I remember I used to get so excited wanting to watch a particular match or tournament. I would sit 1 hour before the match starts, right from every advertisement I would see, not wanting to miss everything. Where is that? Where it is, the match is starting, World Cup final, IPL final is happening. You remember, Guru used to say, you want to know what self-control is? Harishji, you know how to practice self-control? Like, there's so much of food in front of Lord Ganesha, but he doesn't touch it at all. Food is there, but he's not touching. But I just remembered food because I said Harishji, but that's not the context of the example. In the context, Reddy Garu, I'm correct, isn't it, Reddy Garu? No, Harishji, I'm just getting
at the cost of Harishji.
No. How can I say at the cost of Harishji? There's so much we learn, no? Now, coming to the example of watching that match, in this such a fervor, such excitement. Let's say the match is starting at 7 o'clock in the evening. The perfect self-control is you lock yourself in the room, or you go into your room. There's no access to television or any technology. You sit in the room, you attend to some other work, sit till 7:30 and check your mind, how your mind behaves from 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., how your mind behaves. Even for a moment, your thought should not go, oh, the match has started. I don't know who has won the toss. I don't know what's happening. Oh my God, so much excitement. None of that. Till 7:30, you are sitting calm, doing the things. Walk out of the room, sit till 1 o'clock in the morning. No problem. The real spirituality, the real self-control is in that half an hour. Can you withhold that rush? The real control is controlling the rush. Are you with me, Ramji and Hariji? You agree, isn't it, sir? The real control is not in watching or not watching. It's not that a fellow who does not watch has self-control. It's a wrong definition. I may be away from sense objects. That doesn't make me spiritual. I can be amidst a sense object, which is to sit and watch a match. But the real test is the first half an hour. In the example, you control that, you can sit and watch the entire match. You are a man of total self-control. This aspect of philosophy is not highlighted, not justified for people to understand the relevance. They think self-control is to be away from sense objects. Oh, you go to a match, what spirituality is that? Not doing a certain activity is spirituality. Nah, it's completely, you got to revolutionize the thinking, because the applicability of self-control is not denying sense contact, but mastery over senses while you're contacting. Complete mastery. And the perfect acid test is half an hour sit without your mind rushing. Are you able to relate, Harishji? What are you able to relate to? There can be a box of nuts in the fridge lying. I don't know what you're talking about. What is it you could relate to? Rajima? We need to have, does the fridge in the institute have a lock system to that? I think we have missed that element in the.
You know,
Harish?
it never struck me that the fridge and the nuts were there all these days, and I was there all these days, but it's only yesterday. So, you know, the initial rush wasn't there.
No, that is ignorance. The absence.
But perfectly well taken, Guruji, that just denial or withdrawal does not mean
Control.
any amount of development.
Yeah. See, because people perceive, say a person puts on a robe and he keeps away from sense objects. He is perceived to be a spiritual man today. Is it not? Irrespective of what's happening in his mind, there is no measure. I would not know what's happening in your mind. You wouldn't have any iota of idea what's happening in my mind. But the moment you see me in the world, you will brand me as? Ramji, what will you brand me as? He say, look at my so-called guru. He wants to come with me to Australia. Huh? My wife is far more spiritual than him. Huh? I know what you're thinking.
No, sir. I welcome, because in the middle of watching a cricket match, if you can be detached from it, then you are a perfect spiritual guru.
Oh, thank you, sir. So it is not the contact, it is the it's a mental state. It is not the physical, it's a mental state. Wonderful. I don't know where we started, where we ended up. Before we further lose our track, we shall quickly jump to the next Doha. Shall we, Gayatri Ma?